Hey, welcome to another episode of Dave's Imaginations. Today, we're going to recap our game from last night, but also we're going to talk about armor, dealing with penalty checks when wearing heavy armor, and we're going to talk about fog of war and lighting torchlight within a dark dungeon, and how to do that within Foundry Virtual Tabletop and the frustrations I had within my game from last night. And then finally, I'd like to talk about reverse casting a spell. All that and recapping our game coming up right after this. Stay with me. Last night, our group had, this is the second part of our adventure as they have entered into a cave in the mission to save a fairy from its capture. And they're going, save this fairy, and all for the patron of our wizard, Gloriana. Our wizard is Nodding Elf for his patron, his fairy godmother, Gloriana. And Gloriana says, you go rescue this fairy, and I'll owe you a favor. So they all went into this cave, searching out this cave. They come in, and the first thing they see is the first chamber. They have a series of canisters growing, crystal canisters growing out of the wall, of 5 different colors. And they push, they see that, they play with that a little while, nothing happens, and they go into the next chambers, and eventually they get to a chamber that has this fairy in stasis, and they touch it and they get a little zap, and they don't know how to release this fairy, and then they have to start exploring the cave. And so that is what we spent a lot of time of last night doing, as they encountered a number of different psychedelically brightly colored creatures that shine, glow when the light hits them. But the lighting is a question. So here we see those canisters and they saw those, didn't know quite to do with these, and they push forward and they come to this part, and there's a water running throughout this cave system, and there's 3 ways past this water. If they go to the left, there's a swarm of mosquitoes that were doing damage. If they go to the right, there's a rock slide or a slide into the water. And if they go forward, there's a 15-foot drop into the water, which most people took that, jumped into the water from the 15 feet. And they dealt with some lizards before they pushed into this chamber. In this chamber, they found the fairy. They found the fairy in stasis, and it looked something like this. And one of them had one of their henchmen go up and touch it, and they got a little 1-point damage zap and realized that they weren't able to just break her out. There has to be some way of doing it. And they relayed it back to those canisters, which is the right guess. Even more than that, our cleric did a second sight spell to learn that those canisters had to be filled with something. But on the way, as they go through all this water, our barber tried to swim through this channel, only to realize that in his heavy armor, he sank to the bottom. And we learned the bottom was 30 plus feet down, and he's wearing his armor. And so in my game, the armor pulls them, sinks them into the water. You wonder about that. Our barber met his demise drowning from trying to go through this water in his armor. He took a deep breath. I think he knew what he was doing. He thought he could walk across the bottom. However, the rocky slopes of this waterways are just way too steep, and he didn't check that out. Maybe he should have. Anyway, he thought he could just jump in, walk across, and climb up the other side. Wasn't quite able to do that. So the barber, with his armor on, jumped into the water, sank 30 feet to the floor of the water, tried to walk across, tried to climb up the other side. He tried a luck check and wasn't able to. He's in this armor, and all these questions abound about, can you swim in armor? And so to figure this out, in the moment, I said, no, you can't swim. I did give him a luck check as he tried to use his mace to claw his way out of the water. That didn't. Well, his luck check worked. He did stick his mace into the side, but when he pulled himself up 3 feet, it just wasn't enough. And because no one else was around when he got in the water, he drowned. And I felt really bad about that. So and now, after the game, I went to investigate a little bit, and this is regarding heavy armor. And here we are in Chapter 3 under Equipment. We have armor. We can see that scale mail, chainmail, banded mail, half plate, full plate, all have this check penalty of -4. Not to mention your speed is reduced, which I never remember, and your fumble die increases. If we go back to the beginning of the chapter where it talks about the armor and the check penalty, here, let's read this. The check penalty: plate mail is bulky, ill-fitting, and inflexible. Warriors who wear plate mail find the weights inhibits their ability to jump chasms, as do thieves when they try to scale wells. This check penalty, and it says plate mail, but it means all heavy armor. This check penalty varies by the type of armor you wear. This check penalty applies to checks to climb, jump, balance, and swim. The swim moves silently and other physical activities. So this is the paragraph that should have come into play. Now, swimming check with this. Now, I could have set the difficulty class of this swimming. It is rather still water, but still, swimming in this armor just feels really hard to me. And with this, I asked the question in my Facebook group. And so the first person to respond said a DC 15 stamina check to swim to shore or start drowning. And when the first check fails, if the target is drowning, once drowning, the warrior loses a 1d6 stamina per round. Yikes. I didn't do that. I could have done that. It's a pretty good idea to have him do a stamina check. Now I counter, hey, that's 15 stamina check each turn. And oh, by the way, he has a -5 penalty to that check. Yikes. Yeah. And other ideas here, that one person says if he's willing to shed the armor, no check necessary. Yeah, but I say down here somewhere that taking off your armor takes about 10 minutes to do. And so I went over to my ChatGPT and I asked some questions. How long does it take to don and doff armor? And the ChatGPT didn't realize I was talking about Dungeon Crawl Classics, and they responded for Dungeons and Dragons. Light armor is 1 minute, medium armor is 5 minutes, heavy armor is 10 minutes. And then I asked some follow-up questions, saying, okay, in Dungeon Crawl Classics, how long does it take? And they didn't really have an answer. It would take a long time, multiple minutes. And then I said, well, in real life, how long would it take? And they said several minutes again. And then everything varies. Then I said, well, could someone actually swim in chainmail? And here it says, be very difficult and potentially dangerous. That's what I thought too. And then I said, well, then how much does chainmail weigh? And they said, well, it would weigh about 20 and 30 pounds. That makes sense. Now, I know ChatGPT is not always right, but these answers seemed reasonable to me. And so I went with it. I would go with that. And so then I come back to my Facebook group, and one of the more experienced people came in, and I love this answer. See more of this. So the administration and group experts said, would Conan, a Fafhrd, or Aragon survive? Of course! Always find a fair way to allow your hero to get out of such a situation. Sigh. If you don't want to just let them shed their armor to swim, let them roll into their luck, which they did. Should have let them do something, or DC whatever agility check. Yeah, I'm feeling bad about it. And this is a refreshing take. With Dungeon Crawl Classics, so often it seems very brutal, very deathly, as there's no compassion about saving your characters. And this is refreshing for here the group experts say, hey, find a way for your guys to succeed. So that will renew my spirit of giving my guys more chances, ways to figure out through problems. So that is kind of how we resolved it. Sadly, my guy died. Sadly, the guy in my game perished, just sinking into the water, drowning with his armor on. So that's how I did it. How would you do it? How would you, if your person was wearing full plate and they jump into a 30 feet of water, how would you rule it? Would you rule that they could take off their armor? Would you rule that they could swim? Let me know in the comments. Start a discussion. I'm interested in your thoughts. So this is our Thursday night group, or well, rather, this is 3 of our 5 of our Thursday night group. One of the guys hadn't quite gotten here, but this is my setup. We 4 of us sit around this table. 4 of us and me as the dungeon master sit around this table. My father made this table. It's a beautiful table. It has neoprene mat. It has a cutout in the middle. You can see there's a table in the middle. And I share that screen. That is the screen. I run Foundry, and I project the map onto the screen for Foundry, and our tokens are there, and I move it around. I don't have a separate PC to control that is only for the dungeon master. I just do all in front of everyone. I do have one person remote that dials in through who dials in anymore. Joins us through Discord, and so he can watch through the Discord as I share my screen there, as well as he can go into Foundry. I give him a Foundry link and he can go into the screen. And so this is our setup, and so I tell you that so I can share with you what it looks like in Foundry. So here's the map we are, and by the end of the night, the group had figured out they need to collect these crystals and put those crystals in the vases, and they believe that's going to free the fairy from her stasis. And so we have groups in 3 different areas. We have a group over here with a purple gem, and we have a group over here searching for other gem, and then we have a group that kind of stayed in the middle. So three different groups. And as we focus on a group, if I click on one of these guys, we can see we have the fog of war going on. We have a light source of this torch. And as I move this torch, you can see the light moves. Now our halfling, he has dark vision. But if I were to click on this nodding elf guy, he doesn't. And if I were to, let's say, get rid of this torch, he wouldn't be able to see very well, right? So a challenge I kept having is when I clicked off, when I tried to move to a different group, I wasn't able to find them. And I was getting very frustrated, as the only way, in the moment, the only way I figured out to do it was to click on a different tool that gave me the map, and then I could click on a different thing. But then I would forget to move it off of that other tool, and I'd start drawing these spell template things, and I was getting so frustrated. But now that I've played with it since then, I've learned that I can just draw a little square off and it'll show it, and that will make things a lot easier now that I have a little experience with it. So that between the lighting and the fog. Now the other thing that's kind of nice is you can see here that I can, if I move Nodding Elf up here, he can't really see over here, and I've got it shaded dark, but he really can't see over there. So that's a line of vision, and with lighting, and then some fog of war. Now fog of war, since Thursday night, I added a new module. And that module was called Simple Fog. All right, so right here I added this, and that put an overlay over the entire thing, and allows me to quickly draw on or draw off fog of war. So here I can brush size and brush opacity. Here is reveal, and here is hide. So I'm just going to move this to hide, and I'm going to draw this in, right? So here you can see I'm drawing in the fog of war. All right, and so as I move on, as people move on, I can expand the fog of war and do a reveal. I can just manually reveal it and draw the reveal with this paintbrush. So I think that's going to help with the fog of war. Now I can turn this on and off, if the fog of war on and off, by manipulating the configuration of the scene. If I go to configure, I can restrict token visibility within the scene to vision controlled by the tokens. That's on. I have fog explosion, track the explosion progress of the tokens, removing the fog of the war for areas, and I've got that on. And the other one I can play with is global illumination. So this is, with the global illumination on, that means the torches have no effect. So I've got that off. So that's the fog of war, and that's kind of the headaches I was going through it when I let's see, there it goes, me being on the wrong tool again. So hard for me to remember in the moment, is with everything I'm juggling. So if I click on, let's say, this cleric, we can see that her line of sight is restrained. There's something here that's blocking their vision, and they have a torch. Oh, there's a nasty looking mosquito here. They better beware of that. So that is the fog of war component of Foundry. Now the last thing I wanted to cover was reversing spells. So in this adventure, there was a time when they were concerned about being able to see, and they have these torches, and they're going through and they're swimming with torches. Should people be able to swim with torches? I let them. They needed to, so they were concerned about swimming with torches, especially sliding into water and getting those torches wet, and would they work afterward? They did have a few torches, but they were concerned about getting wet and how well they'd work. Now, our cleric had a spell of darkness, and he considered, at least for a while, casting it in reverse. Well, he said he had darkness, and I reminded him that he had the ability to cast that in reverse. However, there would be a penalty to that. So I want to show you the reversing spells, and this is under the magic chapter, the spell checks, and we are in the reversing spells portion. This is page 106 of the Dungeon Crawl Classics Role-Playing Guide, 8th printing. Reversing spells, let's read that. Some spells can be reversed to perform the opposite function for which they were intended. For example, mending can be reversed to tear. Darkness could be turned into light. In my mind, it requires that there's an obvious opposite to the spell. And so, but it's not that easy. It goes on to say, to use the analogy, can you uncook chicken? Can you uncook a chicken pot pie by following the instructions in reverse? Of course not, right? So to cast a spell in reverse, if the wizard attempts to cast that spell in reverse in his repertoire, he makes a spell check to add a reduced die type based on the standard dice charm. So we know most of the time you roll in a d20 to cast a spell, whether it's cleric spell or wizard spell, and you add your cleric or your class level and any modifier from your attributes, and usually you're trying to beat a 12, right? And so to roll that 12 is a lot easier on a 20 than it is on a 16, and that difference is the difference of casting that spell in reverse. So that's what we covered today. We covered armor, we covered fog of war, and we covered reversing spells, and we recapped the game from last week. Our adventurers are going through this cave system, looking to free this fairy for the wizard's patron, Gloriana, and they figured out that they believe they figured out that they need to put these crystals in the crystalline containers. It seems like a pretty good guess, pretty good idea. And then what else might happen, right? We're going to find that out next week. But before you check off, before you drop off, please hit that like, subscribe if you haven't. I'd appreciate it. And we will find out. Tune in next week as we go live. Dungeon Crawl Classics, a homebrew I've made. I haven't decided what to call it. So far, I've been calling it Jinxie's Liberation. Jinxie being the name of the fairy that's been captured. Jinxie's Liberation. Maybe there's another. This game is based off of the Wailing Caverns from World of Warcraft. Loosely. I used a design structure to help me figure out how I want to make the caves, and then I add some water and some interest to it, and then I populated it with monsters, and I came up with the scenario. So that is the story. They haven't met the big bad evil guy yet, and we'll have to find out. Oh, spoiler. There's a big bad evil guy. Surprise! Who knew? Who would have expected? There's a boss in this dungeon. So they'll come up, and we'll go through all that. Hopefully we'll see all that next week when we go live next Thursday for hopefully the finale of Jinxie's Liberation. Liberation of Jinxie? Yeah, we'll see what we call it. All right. So thanks for joining me. I appreciate you. Like, subscribe, and until next week, take care.